Welcome to People and Profit. I'm Kate Moody. Coming up in this week's show, as environmentalists call for more action on climate change, we look at which countries and companies are making it easier to buy electric cars. A year after hitting record highs, the value of Bitcoin has plummeted around 75%. We're speaking to an industry insider about why and what comes next. And it's the most expensive spice in the world. So why aren't saffron producers in Iran turning a profit? First up, there have been dire warnings and calls for action as the COP24 climate change conference takes place in Poland. The host nation has been encouraging a new focus on electro or e-mobility, the shift from traditional gas or diesel motors to battery-powered or plug-in vehicles. Both governments and auto manufacturers around the world are being asked to accelerate the process. One group of activists even cycled 600 kilometers to the summit on electric bikes, a publicity stunt designed to underscore the potential of the technology.
We have opportunities in fighting against climate change with the reduction of costs that we have had in the renewable, for instance, or in the electric vehicles or batteries. And this reduction of costs allows for a new business model that allows a lot of new opportunities.
So, are electric vehicles catching on? Anka Ula's been looking at the trends. Anka?
Well, Kate, it took 60 months for the first 1 million electric cars to sell around the world. That number hit 4 million this September and is predicted to top 5 million by March of next year. China is the biggest buyer, making up more than half of global electric car sales in 2017. So why is electric so hot right now? One reason is governments promising to phase out high-polluting petrol and diesel cars. Norway made the most ambitious pledge. It wants to phase out polluting vehicles by 2025. 2030 is the target year for most countries, including Ireland, the Netherlands, and India. Taiwan, France, and the UK are aiming for 2040. Spain, China, and Germany said that they were in the planning stages to make similar pledges. Now, Norway is by far the best place to own an electric vehicle. Electric car owners get tax breaks, they don't pay tolls or ferry rides, and they sometimes get free parking. Last year, more than half of all cars sold in Norway were electric. France gives consumers subsidies for buying electric cars. It also pays car owners to swap their old diesel vehicles for a new electric one. And China pays both consumers and manufacturers subsidies upwards of $7 billion a year. Automakers have also started investing heavily, joining all-electric firms like Tesla and Chinese startup WM Motor. Traditional automakers like Sweden's Volvo plan to offer electric or hybrid versions of every model by 2019. German automakers Daimler and Volkswagen have both invested billions of euros in electric and self-driving vehicles. And even American giants like GM and Ford are moving their resources to electric vehicle development. Kate?
Anka, thanks so much for that update. Well, from the cars of tomorrow to the money of the future, at least that's what cryptocurrencies could become. But they've had a rocky 12 months as governments scramble to regulate their use. In December 2017, the value of one Bitcoin was hovering at an all-time high, just under $20,000. A year later, prices have collapsed to nearly $4,000. Bitcoin is the best known and most used cryptocurrency, but the slide has extended to competitors like Ethereum, Ripple, and Litecoin. The volatility has raised questions about the future of digital currencies, even as the Nasdaq prepares to start listing Bitcoin futures early in 2019. Now, for more insight, we're joined by Brian O'Hagan from CoinHouse here in Paris. Thanks for being with us on People and Profit. How do you explain the huge slump in the value of Bitcoin over the last year?
Well, there's two main reasons behind the slump. The first one is speculation. Clearly, last year we were in bubble mode. There was a frenzy around cryptocurrencies, and Bitcoin went from 10,000 to 20,000 in the space of a month. And so now it's just the correction around the speculation. And so we're seeing prices fall, and that's not necessarily a bad sign. The second one is actually fundamentals. Last year, there was a lot of hope and hype around new protocols, such as Ethereum, ICOs, and decentralized applications. And we've realized that these protocols are not mature enough, and so they don't scale as much as we would like them to see them scale. And so there's more and more innovation regarding new protocols and scaling solutions.
Do you think Bitcoin is likely to recover, or have we hit the end of the road here?
Well, I can't really predict anything regarding the price, but I think the price is only the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot happening behind in terms of technology. What was great with last year's bubble is that it brought more funding, which meant more interest, more talent, and more research in that space. So I think Bitcoin is in a much stronger position this year than it used to be last year, even though the price is lower.
Now, a lot of people, including some of our viewers, don't always understand how cryptocurrencies work. And there is a sense that that's really preventing it from going mainstream. Do you agree? And how can that be changed?
I do agree. I think, the closest comparison is cryptocurrencies like the internet in the early 90s. In the early 90s, we didn't really understand what internet was and how it worked. And then, Netscape arrived, the email arrived. And I think, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies need their Netscape moment. They need a moment where we can use cryptocurrencies easily and it can be actually useful. So Bitcoin is really useful today for international payments. It's useful for people in Argentina, Iran, or Venezuela who want to fight inflation. But it hasn't been seen a widespread usage through a Netscape-like tool.
Now, with all the focus that there's been on the price and the value of Bitcoin, it's raised some concerns that this is being viewed more as a commodity rather than a currency, something to be invested in rather than something to be used. Was that the point?
No, the point was always to have a digital cash, and still today we see people using it as a digital cash, especially for international transfers between companies. Let's say you want to pay a supplier in Brazil, and you don't want to have hefty fees related to that exchanging currencies. Well, you can go through Bitcoin. But it's true that today mostly people see it as an investment, a sort of digital gold, because it is to some extent uncorrelated to markets today, and so that's how people are seeing it today mostly.
Other competitors, though, are more viewed as a commodity rather than currency, rather than cash.
Exactly. Ethereum, which is the second biggest market capitalization in the crypto space, is seen as the internet's fuel for decentralized applications. So you need Ether to actually run decentralized applications, or you need Ether to create smart contracts, which are the really interesting use case around this protocol.
Now, leaders at this year's G20 summit called for international standards to try and regulate cryptocurrencies. How close do you think we are to an international framework or even domestic frameworks as countries try to catch up?
We're not there yet, to be honest. I think the most important thing today for regulators is to understand how these technologies work in order to regulate them. In France, we have regulators that are writing an article 26, where they're creating a framework to regulate this in France. This will be the first European framework. And in the US, they also working to understand these cryptocurrencies. So I think the international framework is not there yet, but we'll definitely see some more cooperation around this international framework at a European level and at an international level too.
Do you think that having more rules will give the industry more legitimacy, more mainstream?
I think, yeah, definitely so. Today, it's really hard to be legitimate in front of the financial system because a lot of actors, such as CoinHouse, don't actually have licenses to operate in countries like France or Europe. So tomorrow, with an actual framework and a license to operate here in France, for instance, we will be more legitimate regarding partners, regarding clients, and international expansion in general.
We've heard about some hacking incidents over the past year, scams. How secure are cryptocurrencies?
So the protocol is actually super secure. It's nearly impossible to hack it. The only difference is that when one possesses cryptocurrencies, what they possess is a private key, and one needs to secure this private key. And so this startup here in France called Ledger, they specialize in that type of solution. They create little hardware wallets to secure private keys. And so when we talk about hacking, it's actually hackers obtaining these private keys from exchanges, because these exchanges haven't put up enough security measures to protect their private keys.
Right, Brian O'Hagan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks a million.
Next, it's known as red gold. Saffron is highly sought after around the world, and chefs pay top prices for its delicate aroma and taste. But producers in Iran, who grow most of the global supply, aren't cashing in. Ellen Gainsford explains.
These women are harvesting the world's most expensive spice, saffron. The delicate flower sprouts for just 10 days a year. 90% of the world's saffron grows here in Iran's Khorasan province, eventually finding its way to Spanish paellas, Indian curries, and Swedish saffron buns. But its harvest is now in jeopardy. Iran has been suffering through a devastating drought, a dry spell that's gone on for the past 2 decades.
The drought starts south of Khorasan province, like in the city of Rayen, and is spreading towards the north. This means that in the future, we might not have any more saffron.
Farmers have no choice but to invest in more sophisticated irrigation systems if they want to survive. But Iran's banking sector is reluctant to lend to small businesses. This factory sends out around 15 tons of high-grade saffron to world markets using modern machines. Another obstacle is Iran's struggling economy. Saffron currently sells at around $700 a kilo in Iran, and 4 times higher abroad.
Because of the devaluation of the Iranian rial, we're selling saffron to our international buyers at a lower price in euros. But it's become so much more expensive for Iranians who buy it in rial.
China's increasing interest in the spice has boosted international sales. Saffron is now a priority export for Iran's government, as foodstuffs are protected from US sanctions.
Well, that's all for this week, but you can find the best of our business coverage on our Facebook page, France 24 Business, or you can tweet me at Kate A. Moody. Until next time, thanks for watching.
New technology, the latest innovation and its impact on a digital society.
Didn't even know about it.
Tech 24. Presented by Julia Seeger and Dhananjay Kadilkar on France 24 and France24.com.